Peppa Pig, Peppa's super noisy sound book. It is a very rainy day. Peppa and George are in their house. "We are going to have a quiet day inside," says Mummy Pig. "Aww," sighs Peppa and George, disappointed. Peppa and George love going outside to play. "Ho ho. Cheer up, you two," smiles Daddy Pig. "You can help me mend the kitchen cupboard." "Kitchen cupboards are boring," says Peppa. "I don't like the rain," giggles George. Just then, the telephone rings. It's Mrs. Rabbit, Rebecca Rabbit's mummy. "Can Rebecca and Richard come to play?" she asks. "Of course," says Mummy Pig. "Yippee!" cheers Peppa. Rebecca and Richard Rabbit arrive. Richard has brought his brand new toy car. "Vroom, vroom," squeaks Richard. And George has his toy, Mr. Dinosaur. "Dinosaur!" growls George. Peppa and George get out their musical toys and make lots and lots of noise. Laughs Peppa, very proud of herself. "Hooray!" cheer Richard and Rebecca. Now Susie Sheep has arrived and Mummy Pig has made lunch for everyone. "Gobble, gobble, delicious," everyone cries. "Burp," burps Peppa. "Excuse me." "It's stopped raining," says Mummy Pig. "Let's take the leftover bread and feed the ducks." "Squeak, squeak," queers Rebecca Rabbit. "Shall we give them carrots?" Rebecca Rabbit likes carrots. "I think the ducks would prefer bread," smiles Mummy Pig. Says George, jumping up and down. "Peppa, George," says Mummy Pig, "let Daddy put on your rain boots first." "Yes, George," says Peppa. "If you jump in muddy puddles, you must wear your boots." "We're going to see the ducks. We're going to see the ducks," sings Peppa. George, Susie, Rebecca and Richard all join in very loudly. "Ho ho," laughs Daddy Pig. "What a lovely song, but you don't have to sing it quite so loudly." "Hello, Mrs. Duck," cries Peppa, throwing some crumbs. "I hope you're hungry." It's Richard Rabbit's first time feeding the ducks, and he's a bit scared. "Don't be scared, Richard," says Peppa. "They won't hurt you. Watch me." Peppa shows Richard how to feed the ducks. "Wah, wah, wah, wah," shouts Richard. "Dinosaur!" shouts George. "Silly George," laughs Peppa. "You always say dinosaur for everything." "Why don't you find some muddy puddles to jump in?" says Mummy Pig. "Yippee!" Peppa shouts. Splish splash. Everyone is having a wonderful noisy time jumping and splashing. Here is Danny Dog and his mummy. Danny jumps in a great big puddle. Squelch! Oops! He splashed Daddy Pig's glasses. "Oh dear," says Peppa. "Now Daddy will be grumpy." "I am not grumpy," snorts Daddy Pig. "How about a nice quiet game of hide and seek?" suggests Mummy Pig. "Yippee!" shouts Peppa. "I'm brilliant at seeking." Everyone hides while Peppa covers her eyes and counts to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. George isn't very good at hiding. He stands by a tree with his eyes closed. Peppa thinks this is very funny and decides to surprise him. Very quietly, she creeps up behind him. Grunts Peppa loudly. Oh dear! George is very surprised and drops Mr. Dinosaur into a muddy puddle. George starts to cry. Peppa, have you been teasing George? Says Mummy Pig. Sorry, George, says Peppa. All the parents have come to collect the children. It is time to go home. Goodbye, everyone, cheers Peppa. Everybody waves goodbye. Ho ho, chuckles Daddy Pig. Peace at last. It's time for Peppa and George to go to bed. First, they brush their teeth. Scrub, scrub. Now let's have a nice, quiet bedtime story, says Mummy Pig. What shall we read? Asked Daddy Pig. Can we have one all about music? Peppa asks. I love music. Daddy Pig begins the bedtime story. It's about two very noisy piggies playing very noisy musical instruments. Peppa, George, and even Mr. Dinosaur join in all the actions. Roar, roar, growls George. Laughs Peppa. Peppa and George are a little bit sleepy. George starts to fall asleep first. That wasn't a very quiet day, giggles Peppa, yawning. No, it was a very noisy day, Peppa, replies Daddy Pig, smiling. But Peppa is already fast asleep. The end. Peppa Pig, Pirate Island. I'm Peppa Pig. This is my little brother George, and this is the story of the day we went to Pirate Island. Grandpa and Granny Pig took Peppa and her friends for a busy day out on Grandpa's boat. All aboard, said Grandpa Pig. Is everyone wearing their life jackets? Then off we go. George, you can have my pirate hat, said Grandpa Pig. Today we are sailing to Pirate Island, and if we are lucky, we might find buried treasure. Everyone was very excited. The boat landed on a sandy beach. Everyone climbed to the top of the island. Grandpa Pig planted a flag and said, "This is Pirate Island. Now let's look for buried treasure." Grandpa took a strange machine out of his bag. "What's that?" asked Susie Sheep. "It is a metal detector," said Grandpa Pig. "It finds buried treasure." He waved it over the ground and suddenly it started to beep. "Buried treasure!" cried Grandpa. "Let's dig it up." "Here's something," said Danny Dog. "It's a shiny coin. Maybe it's pirate treasure," said Grandpa. Everyone gathered round to look. Grandpa waved the metal detector over a new patch of sand and it beeped again. "This sounds very big," said Grandpa. Everyone dug and Grandpa pulled and pulled at the heavy object until suddenly it came free. "That's not buried treasure," said Grandpa Pig. "It's a rusty old shopping trolley." "Oh dear," laughed Granny Pig. "Maybe that's enough treasure hunting. Who wants to go to the rocky beach?" Everyone wanted to go to the rocky beach. "I'll go and check on the boat," said Grandpa Pig. Granny Pig and the children went off, leaving Grandpa Pig to do important boat things. It was a warm and sunny day on the boat deck. "Ah, "This is nice," said Grandpa Pig. "Maybe I'll just close my eyes for a little bit." Granny Pig showed the children the rocky beach. "When the sea goes out, it leaves little pools of water in amongst the rocks, and every rock pool there's something special that the sea has left behind." Peppa looked in a pool. "Ooh, I can see something glittering. It's a shiny coin." "Maybe it's more pirate treasure," said Granny Pig. "And here's a seashell," said Peppa. "If you put a seashell to your ear, you can hear the sound of the sea," said Granny Pig. Peppa listened. "Wow, I can hear the sea." George had found something hiding at the bottom of the pool. "Why, it's a crab," said Granny Pig. "Ouch! The crab has pinched Granny Pig's finger," said Peppa. "Naughty Mr. Crab. Oh, look, Mr. Crab is walking sideways." George was walking sideways too, pretending to be a naughty pinching crab. "Let's all be crabs," said Peppa. Everyone played at being naughty pinching crabs. "Time to go home now," said Granny Pig. They all went back to the sandy beach. "Where's the boat gone?" said Granny Pig. "Look," said Peppa. There was the boat drifting out to sea, with Grandpa Pig fast asleep on the deck. "We have to wake Grandpa Pig up," said Granny Pig. "Shout as loudly as you can." Everybody shouted, but Grandpa Pig didn't wake up. "He's too far away to hear us," said Granny Pig. "We're stuck on Pirate Island forever," said Susie Sheep. "We're castaways. We'll have to eat insects and slugs," said Danny Dog. The boat floated across the sea, with Grandpa Pig sleeping peacefully. It drifted all the way back to the shore, where the parents were waiting to collect the children. "Hello, Grandpa Pig," said the parents. Grandpa Pig woke up with a start. Hello, everyone. I've just left something behind. I'll be back in a tick." And Grandpa Pig turned the boat round and set off for Pirate Island as fast as he could go. "There's Grandpa Pig," cried Peppa. "He's come to rescue us." "Welcome aboard, me hearties," said Grandpa Pig, and everyone got back on the boat. "Naughty Grandpa Pig," said Granny Pig. "We thought you'd left us behind." "Sorry about that," said Grandpa Pig. "Next time I promise not to fall asleep." "So we can visit Pirate Island again, Grandpa?" asked Peppa. "Of course we can, Peppa. I love Pirate Island," said Peppa. "What an exciting adventure we have all had today," laughed Granny Pig. "Goodbye until next time, me hearties." Peppa Pig. Beep beep. Broom. George's Noisy Vehicle Book. Peppa and her family are going for a picnic in the countryside. "Hooray!" cries Peppa. "I love picnics." George loves picnics too, but he wants to stay at home and play with his toys. "Cheer up, George, we'll have a lovely day," says Daddy Pig, beeping his horn. "Beep beep," giggles George. He likes their noisy red car. Off they drive down the hill. But what's that noise? It's Mr. Zebra's post van.
Wow!
"We're stuck in a traffic jam," says Mr. Zebra. "Oh dear," says Daddy Pig. "This isn't a good start." "Honk honk," laughs George. At last they're on the move. But what's that noise? It's Mr. Bull's digger. Moo! You'll have to wait, bellows Mr. Bull. We're digging up the road. Not another delay, cries Mummy Pig. Dig, 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 laughs George. At last, Mr. Bull has finished and off they go. Hooray! But what's that noise? It's a fire engine. Wow! You'll have to wait while I put out the fire, shouts Mrs. Sheep. Nah, cries George, bouncing up and down on the back seat. At last the fire is put out, and off they go. Hooray! But what's that noise? It's a train. Daddy Pig has to stop while the train whizzes past. Kiki! Laughs George. Can we go home for our picnic? Asks Peppa. What a good idea, says Mummy Pig. But George doesn't want to go home. He's loved seeing all the noisy vehicles. Cheer up, George, says Peppa. You'll be able to play with all your noisy toys. And he does. The end. Peppa Pig, Peppa's Christmas. It is Christmas Eve. Peppa, George and their friends are posting letters to Father Christmas. I can't wait to see what Father Christmas brings us all, cries Peppa. Everyone is very excited. That afternoon, Daddy Pig buys the biggest Christmas tree he can find. Daddy, it won't fit in the car, giggles Peppa. I'll just have to carry it home, grunts Daddy Pig. Daddy Pig carries the Christmas tree up and down the hill all the way home. The tree is heavy and it takes him a long time. Poor Daddy Pig, he is worn out. Daddy Pig finally makes it home. Let's decorate the tree, says Mummy Pig. Daddy Pig puts a shiny star at the very top. Ooh! Everyone gasps. The tree looks beautiful. Peppa and George leave a snack for Father Christmas by the fireplace. Time for bed now, smiles Daddy. Father Christmas won't come unless you are asleep. Peppa and George are tucked up in bed when they hear a loud thump. It's Father Christmas. He can't get down the chimney, so he goes down to the front door. Peppa and George race downstairs giggling. Hello, Peppa and George, cries Father Christmas. Merry Christmas. Now off to bed so I can deliver your presents. Hooray! It's Christmas morning. George gets a toy train and Peppa gets a yo-yo. But Peppa and George's favourite present was definitely meeting Father Christmas. This is the best Christmas ever! Cheers, Peppa. The end. Peppa Pig, Good Night, Peppa. Once upon a time, Granny and Grandpa Pig came round for dinner. It was almost time for Peppa and George to go to bed. Suddenly, Daddy Pig yawned very loudly while they were eating. Everyone giggled. Ho, ho, ho. Sorry, snorted Daddy Pig. I'm a little tired. Peppa and George weren't tired at all. Can we jump in puddles just for a tiny bit? Asked Peppa. Please. Okay, said Daddy Pig, but you must come in at bath time. Peppa and George loved jumping up and down in muddy puddles. They jumped up and down until they were covered in mud. Peppa, George, called Daddy Pig. You must be feeling sleepy after all that jumping. Let's get you into the bath. But Daddy, we're not even a little bit sleepy, replied Peppa. Peppa and George splashed in the bath until they were both nice and clean. I think bath time is over, said Daddy Pig, who was dripping wet. You must be tired after all that splashing. We're not even a little bit tired, cried Peppa, splashing Daddy Pig again. Laughed George. Daddy Pig was soaked. Peppa and George hopped out the bath. They dried off and put their pyjamas on very slowly. Then they brushed their teeth for an extra long time. Brush, brush, brush. Quick, wash your faces. Granny Pig wants to tuck you into bed, said Mummy Pig. Yippee! Cheered Peppa. Candy egg! Cheered George. Peppa and George were finally ready for bed. They said goodnight to Mummy and Daddy Pig and found Granny Pig waiting in their room. Come on, little ones, said Granny Pig. It's bedtime. Hop in. I can't go to bed without Teddy, said Peppa. Dinosaur, sobbed George. So Granny Pig found Teddy and Mr. Dinosaur and tucked everyone in. Good night, Peppa and Teddy, said Granny Pig. Good night, George and Mr. Dinosaur. But we're not even the tiniest bit sleepy, Granny, said Peppa. I see, said Granny Pig. I wonder what will make you sleepy. Can you tell us a bedtime story? Asked Peppa. Of course, Peppa, said Granny Pig. As long as you promise to go to sleep as soon as the story ends. We promise, cried Peppa. Peppa and George loved bedtime stories. Granny Pig began telling a story. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful princess called Peppa, interrupted Peppa. Yes, said Granny Pig. And Sir George the Brave Knight, Peppa interrupted again. Giggled George. Granny Pig carried on. Princess Peppa and Sir George lived in a castle. A great big castle in the sky, said Peppa. Granny Pig tried to finish the story. Princess Peppa and Sir George had been playing all day in the castle and were very tired. Then the king arrived, cheered Peppa, and the cook, and the wizard, and the scary dragon dinosaur. Dinosaur, added George. And the cook made them all a giant picnic with sandwiches, cakes, jelly. Peppa listed all the food she could think of. Grandpa Pig came to find Granny Pig. I'm telling Peppa and George a bedtime story, explained Granny Pig. And we promise to go to sleep when this story ends, added Peppa. I see, said Grandpa Pig. Granny Pig, why don't you leave this to me? I am good at ending stories. So Granny Pig said good night and went downstairs. Grandpa Pig did his best to end the story. After they ate the lovely picnic, everyone fell asleep. The end. But Peppa did not want the story to end. Then they all woke up and their friends arrived, she cried. Princess Peppa's carriage, and decided to have a great big party. Soon, Daddy Pig came upstairs. I'm the expert at telling bedtime stories, he said. Then he whispered quietly to Grandpa Pig, I'll have them asleep in no time. So Grandpa Pig said good night and went downstairs. Princess Peppa and Sir George were just about to have a great big party, Peppa told Daddy Pig. I see, he replied. Thud, thud, thud. Mummy Pig heard banging, so she came upstairs too. Peppa, George and Daddy Pig were dancing. We're having a party like in the story, explained Peppa. They're almost asleep, said Daddy Pig. Thank you, Daddy, said Mummy Pig. I'll take over now. So Daddy Pig said goodnight and went downstairs. Mummy Pig tucked Peppa and George back into bed. Then she asked Peppa to tell her the whole bedtime story from the beginning, very quietly. Once upon a time, whispered Peppa, yawning, there was a beautiful princess called Peppa. She lived with Sir George, the brave knight, in a great big castle in the sky. Speaking softly was making Peppa really sleepy. Peppa tried to finish the story, but she just couldn't keep her eyes open. Soon, George fell fast asleep, and so did Peppa. Mummy Pig looked at her two little ones, smiled, and whispered, Good night, George. Good night, Peppa. Then she headed downstairs to find Granny, Grandpa Pig, and Daddy Pig fast asleep. It was bedtime for Peppa and George, and it was bedtime for everyone else too. Good night, said Mummy Pig. The end. Peppa Pig, Pedros Cough. Peppa and her friends are waiting for Madame Gazelle to start their music lesson. Miss Polly Hatty Dolly, sings Madame Gazelle. What is that strange noise? Poor Pedro Pony has a nasty cough. Not to worry, says Madame Gazelle. I'll ring Dr. Brown Bear. Dr. Brown Bear looks after everyone when they are poorly. Dr. Brown Bear picks up his medical kit, jumps in his doctor's car, and drives straight to playgroup. I've got a cough, says Pedro when Dr. Brown Bear arrives. It's nothing serious, says Dr. Brown Bear. But it may be catching, so we'll give you some medicine. Cries Pedro. It tastes like old shoe full of jam. Susie Sheep and Danny Dog start to cough too. As I thought, says Dr. Brown Bear. Pedro's cough is catching. He gives them both some cough medicine. It tastes of carpet-flavoured yogurt, says Susie. Yuck! It tastes of flowers, says Danny. Do you ever get ill, Dr. Brown Bear? Asked Peppa. I'm never ill because I eat an apple a day, says Dr. Brown Bear. Soon it is home time, and the parents arrive to pick up the children. "I've got a cough," says Pedro. "Dr. Brown Bear came to look after us," says Danny. All the adults start coughing too. Peppa picks up the phone. "Dr. Brown Bear, now all the grown-ups are ill," she says. Now it is the grown-ups' turn to take the cough medicine. "It tastes like custard and old socks," cries Madame Gazelle. All the grown-ups must take the medicine to help them feel better. No one likes the medicine. "Who looks after you when you're ill?" asks Peppa. "No one looks after me," replies Dr. Brown Bear. "I'm never..." Dr. Brown Bear has caught Pedro's cough too. Oh no! "Who will look after Dr. Brown Bear?" gasped Peppa. Poor Dr. Brown Bear is taken to hospital. He has some visitors. Danny has brought some fruit. Susie has brought the medicine. "Open wide," says Susie. "Ugh!" cries Dr. Brown Bear. "It tastes like jammy yogurt flavoured carpet shoe with floury custard old socks." Soon Dr. Brown Bear is feeling better. Everyone loves being looked after, even Dr. Brown Bear. The end. Peppa Pig, the train ride. Today, Madame Gazelle, Peppa and her friends are going on a train ride. "Can I see your tickets, please?" Mr. Rabbit asks them. The children wave their tickets in the air. "Oh no, I've lost my ticket," Pedro cries. "There's your ticket," Madame Gazelle says, pointing to a ticket on the ground. "Try not to lose it again," says Mr. Rabbit, smiling at Pedro. "All aboard!" calls Miss Rabbit, the train driver, as the train pulls into the station. The children and Madame Gazelle jump onto the train and take their seats. The train pulls out of the station and heads down the hill. Madame Gazelle gives the children an activity sheet.
Wow!
They have to spot a boat, a signal box, and a tunnel. Just then Peppa says, "I can see Grandad Dog." "Ahoy there!" Grandad Dog calls. "Hooray!" the children cheer, and then they tick their boat on their activity sheets. Pedro doesn't feel very well, so Madame Gazelle lets him go to the front of the train. Miss Rabbit lets him wear her hat and drive the train for a bit, which makes him feel much better. The train puffs slowly uphill. The train puffs quickly downhill. "Whee!" cry the children. The train stops at the junction to let Mrs. Duck and her friends safely across. "A signal box, that's on our list," says Peppa. "Hooray!" the children cheer, and then they tick signal box on their activity sheets. The train sets off again. Toot toot! Suddenly it all goes dark. "Ooh, we're in a tunnel," Peppa says. "A tunnel is the last thing on our list." The children tick tunnel on their activity sheets and give a cheer. Hooray! "Last stop," Miss Rabbit calls. "But Madame Gazelle, how will we get home?" Peppa asks. "We are home, Peppa," Madame Gazelle replies. "The train has gone in a big circle." So they are right back where they started. "Tickets, please," Mr. Rabbit says one last time. "Pedro, can I have my hat back, please?" Miss Rabbit asks. When Pedro lifts up the hat, there is his ticket. "Oh, that's where I put it," Pedro says, and everybody giggles. The end. Peppa Pig, Best Friends. Once upon a time, Peppa's best friend, Susie Sheep, came to play. "I have something to show you," said Susie. Susie held up a photograph of a baby sheep. "Look, it's me," said Susie. "You're not a baby, Susie," said Peppa, shaking her head. "This is an old photo," Susie explained. "It was taken when I was a baby." Peppa snorted. She doesn't remember Susie being a baby. That was just silly. Susie pointed at Peppa. "In the olden days, you were a baby too," she said. "I don't remember being a baby," says Peppa. "But you were," insisted Susie. "Ask your mummy." Peppa and Susie raced inside. Mummy Pig was working on the computer. "Mummy," cried Peppa, "Susie is making up stories." "No, I'm not," Susie said. Peppa told Mummy Pig about Susie's silly idea. "I don't remember being a baby," Peppa insisted. "But you were a baby, Peppa," said Mummy Pig. Mummy Pig pulled up a picture of a baby pig on the computer. "Who do you think this is, Peppa?" she asked. Peppa thought that the baby looked like her cousin, Baby Alexander. "Is it Baby Alexander?" she asked. "No," replied Mummy Pig. "That's you as a baby, Peppa."
Wow.
Peppa was surprised. She had been a baby. Peppa and Susie giggled. Baby Peppa looked very cute. George and Daddy Pig came in to see what all the fuss was about. "Look, Daddy," said Peppa, "that's me as a baby." "I remember it," said Daddy Pig. "That photo was taken on our first day in this house." "What do you mean?" asked Peppa. Daddy Pig told Peppa, Susie and George that they had moved into their house when Peppa was very little. "We brought all our things on top of our car," he said. "Mummy Pig put up some pictures," said Daddy Pig. "Daddy Pig put up a shelf," said Mummy Pig. "And Grandpa made us a lovely flower garden." Peppa and Susie went outside. There was no flower garden at this house. "Why don't we have a flower garden now?" Peppa asked. "We used to, but Daddy Pig looked after it," Mummy Pig sighed. Said Daddy Pig, embarrassed. "We had the wrong kind of soil for flowers." "Was Susie my friend in the olden days?" asked Peppa. Daddy Pig nodded. Of course, he said. You and Susie have always been best friends. Peppa wondered what game she played with Susie when they were little. Did we jump up and down in muddy puddles? She asked. No, Mummy Pig laughed. You were babies. You couldn't even walk yet. What did we do when we were babies? Asked Susie. You cried. You burped. And you laughed, said Mummy Pig. Susie and Peppa giggled. It must have been so silly being babies. Baby Peppa. Baby Susie. And then you grew into toddlers, continued Mummy Pig. And you played together all the time. But where was George? Peppa asked. He was a baby in my tummy, said Mummy Pig. Peppa thought for a moment. Daddy Pig's tummy was even bigger than Mummy's. Is there a baby in there? She asked. No, Peppa, chuckled Daddy Pig. This tummy is pure muscle. Soon George was born, Mummy Pig said, and Granny and Grandpa Pig bought him a very special present. Can you guess what it was, Peppa? Peppa knew just what present it had been. Mr. Dinosaur, she cried. Grr, grr, grr. Daddy Pig said that little Peppa and Susie liked to do everything together. They liked to jump, dance, and run around all over the place. Then one day, said Mummy Pig, you saw something amazing. A muddy puddle. You love jumping up and down in muddy puddles together, said Mummy Pig. I still love muddy puddles, cried Peppa. Me too, cried Susie. Peppa, George and Susie looked for the biggest muddy puddle they could find and jumped right in. Daddy Pig brought his camera. Let's take a photo of you, Susie and George now, Peppa, he said. Yes, exclaimed Peppa, because Susie and I were best friends in the olden days and we're still best friends now. Little or big, Peppa and Susie will always be best friends, and they will always love jumping up and down in muddy puddles. The end. Peppa Pig, Susie Sheep. This is Peppa's friend, Susie Sheep. Susie is Peppa's best friend. Hooray! This photo was taken when we were babies, says Susie. Peppa gasped. We've been friends since the olden days. Susie likes playing doctors and nurses. Who will be our patient? Wonders Susie. I know, says Peppa. We can ask my daddy. Sometimes Peppa and Susie go camping together. Wow! I like sharing a tent with you, says Peppa. I like sharing a tent with you, says Susie. Peppa and Susie are both in a secret club. Can we join too? Asked Rebecca Rabbit. Yes, whispered Susie. Just say the secret words. Flobble dobble. Peppa has lots of fun with her friend Susie. When Susie goes away, Peppa feels a bit sad. But when Susie comes back, everything is twice as nice. Peppa loves Susie Sheep. Everyone loves Susie Sheep. The end. Peppa Pig, Peppa and Susie's argument. Peppa and her best friend Susie Sheep are playing Snap.
I win again,
says Susie. Peppa isn't happy.
You cheated,
She shouts.
you looked at the card. I did not,
Cries Susie.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
Says Peppa.
I don't want to play with you anymore,
Says Susie. Peppa and Susie have had an argument. They are not best friends anymore. Mummy Sheep arrives to take Susie home. Peppa, say goodbye to Susie, says Mummy Pig.
I'm not talking to her,
Says Peppa.
and I'm not talking to her.
Says Susie. I'm sure they'll make up. They are best friends really, says Mummy Pig.
We are not best friends anymore,
Says Peppa. The next day is lovely and sunny. All the children are at the playground. Everyone is playing with their best friend. Everyone except Peppa and Susie. Susie is on the swing on her own. She feels sad. Peppa is playing mini golf on her own. She feels sad. Emily Elephant comes over.
Please, can I have a go?
Asks Emily.
Yes,
Says Peppa.
you can be my best friend. But my best friend is Candy Cat.
Says Emily. Susie watches Zoe Zebra play on the slide.
Zoe, if you want, you can be my best friend.
Says Susie.
But my best friend is Rebecca Rabbit.
Says Zoe. Zoe and Rebecca skip off together. Susie is alone again. Then Peppa and Susie see each other.
Hello, Susie.
Says Peppa.
Hello, Peppa.
Says Susie. I think it's time you two made up, says Daddy Pig.
Only if Susie says sorry first. Only if Peppa says sorry first,
says Susie. I'll count to 3 and you can both say sorry at the same time, suggests Daddy Pig. 1, 2, 3.
Sorry,
say Peppa and Susie together. Now you can be best friends again, says Daddy Pig.
Susie, let's play mini golf,
Says Peppa.
Wow. Good idea,
Says Susie. Peppa goes first. Her ball stops near the hole. Susie goes next. Her ball knocks Peppa's ball into the hole.
I win.
Says Peppa.
No, I win.
Says Susie.
But my ball knocked it in, so I win.
Says Susie. Peppa and Susie are having an argument again. Oh no! Ho ho! You two are just the same, says Daddy Pig. Peppa and Susie laugh too. They realise he is right.
That's why Susie is my best friend in the whole world,
Says Peppa.
and Peppa is my best friend in the whole world.
Says Susie. Everyone is happy that Peppa and Susie are friends again. The end. Peppa Pig, the Big Tale of Little Peppa. Once upon a time, Peppa's best friend, Susie Sheep, came to play.
I've got something to show you,
Said Susie.
Look, it's me.
Said Susie.
You're not a baby, Susie.
Said Peppa, shaking her head.
This is an old photo.
Susie explained.
It was taken when I was little.
Peppa snorted. Susie was being very silly today. Susie pointed at Peppa.
In the olden days, you were a baby too.
she said.
No, I wasn't, said Peppa. Yes, you were,
insisted Susie.
Ask your mummy.
Peppa and Susie raced inside. Mummy Pig was working on the computer.
Mummy,
cried Peppa.
Susie is making up stories. No, I'm not,
Susie said crossly. Peppa told Mummy Pig about Susie's silly idea that they used to be babies. But you were a baby, Peppa, said Mummy Pig. Mummy Pig took a look on the computer. Who do you think this is, Peppa? Mummy Pig asked. Peppa thought that the baby looked a bit like her cousin.
Is it baby Alexander?
She asked.
No,
replied Mummy Pig. That's you as a baby, Peppa. Susie and Peppa giggled. They'd never seen baby Peppa before. George and Daddy Pig came in to see what all the fuss was about.
Look, Daddy,
said Peppa.
That's me as a baby.
I remember it, said Daddy Pig. That photo was taken on the first day in this house.
What do you mean?
asked Peppa. Daddy Pig told Peppa, Susie and George that they had moved into their house when Peppa was very little. We brought all our things on top of our car, he said. Mummy Pig put some pictures up, said Daddy Pig.
Daddy Pig put up a shelf,
said Mummy Pig.
And Grandpa Pig made us a lovely flower garden,
she continued. Peppa and Susie went outside to see what Grandpa Pig's lovely flower garden looked like now. It had completely disappeared.
Daddy Pig looked after our flower garden, said Mummy Pig.
Said Daddy Pig. We had the wrong kind of soil for flowers.
Was Susie my friend in the olden days?
asked Peppa. Daddy Pig nodded. Of course, he said. You and Susie have always been best friends. Peppa wondered what game she played with Susie when they were little.
Did we jump up and down in muddy puddles?
No, Peppa, laughed Mummy Pig.
You were babies. You couldn't even walk. What did we do when we were babies, Mrs. Pig?
asked Susie.
You cried. You burped.
And you laughed. Susie and Peppa burst out laughing.
Baby Peppa. Baby Susie.
Then you grew into toddlers, said Mummy Pig.
But where was George?
Peppa asked.
He was a baby in my tummy,
said Mummy Pig. George looked very surprised at this part of the story. What a funny idea. Peppa thought for a minute. Daddy's tummy was even bigger than Mummy's.
Is there a baby in there?
She said. No, Peppa, chuckled Daddy Pig. This tummy is pure muscle. Mummy Pig said that after a little while, George was born, and she remembered the time that Granny and Grandpa Pig gave George a very special present.
Can you guess what it was, Peppa?
Peppa knew straight away.
Mr. Dinosaur!
She cried. Daddy Pig explained that Peppa and Susie didn't stay little for very long. They liked to jump and dance and run around all over the place. Then one day, said Mummy Pig, You saw something amazing. A muddy puddle. Mummy Pig said, you love jumping up and down in muddy puddles. After Mummy and Daddy Pig's big tale of little Peppa, Susie, George and Peppa ran outside to the garden. I still love muddy puddles. Peppa cheered and jumped into the biggest one she could find. Susie and George jumped in too. Daddy Pig went to find the camera. Let's take a photo of you now, he suggested. Peppa, Susie and George did their best smiles. Little or big, Peppa will always love jumping up and down in muddy puddles. The end. Peppa Pig, Peppa's Fairy Tale. Once upon a time, Peppa and George were looking at storybooks together.
This one has 3 bears, porridge, and a hungry wolf looking for an old lady to eat,
said Peppa. George looked worried.
Don't worry, George, added Peppa. There's always a happy ending, sighed Peppa. I wish we lived in a fairy story.
Peppa, George, called Mummy Pig. It's time to go to Granny and Grandpa Pig's house for lunch. We're going to walk there through the woods.
But we want to go on a magical fairy tale adventure, said Peppa.
Maybe if we look hard enough, we might see some magical things on the way, said Daddy Pig.
This doesn't feel like a magical fairy tale place,
said Peppa as they walked through the woods. It feels a bit magical to me, said Daddy Pig, looking at the trees around them. Yes, agreed Mummy Pig. This is like the patch in the Little Red Riding Hood. I wouldn't be surprised if we bumped into the big bad wolf, said Daddy Pig. Just then, Daddy Pig bumped straight into Mr. Wolf. Oh, hello, Mr. Wolf, said Daddy Pig. How are you? Very well, replied Mr. Wolf. I'm just a bit hungry.
I'm going to my granny's house for lunch, said Peppa.
Are you really? Asked Mr. Wolf. Well, I'll catch you later then. Bye.
That was just like Little Red Riding Hood,
gasped Peppa.
Meeting Mr. Wolf in the woods.
I'm not sure which way to go now, mumbled Daddy Pig.
There's a little cottage over there, said Peppa. Maybe someone inside will know the way.
Peppa and her family walked through a rose garden and up to the cottage. Hello, called Daddy Pig, knocking on the door. As Daddy Pig knocked, the door opened all by itself. Is there anybody home? Asked Mummy Pig, wondering who would live in a cottage in the middle of the woods. Inside the cottage there were 3 chairs and 3 bowls of porridge. That porridge looks delicious, said Daddy Pig. I wonder whose it is. Hello, Peppa, cried Belinda Bear, spotting her friend.
Hello, Belinda,
said Peppa. Oh, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Bear, said Mummy Pig. Sorry to trouble you, but the door just opened, so we came inside. That's quite all right, said Mrs. Bear. It's lovely to see you all.
Are you going to stay for lunch, Peppa?
asked Belinda.
We're just having porridge, and it's not too hot, not too cold.
But just right, finished Peppa. Belinda and Peppa laughed together. We're actually on our way to have lunch at Granny and Grandpa Pig's house, said Mummy Pig. but we got a bit lost. Could you point us in the right direction, please? Mr. Bear pointed the way, and Peppa and her family set off again.
Wow, said Peppa. That was just like Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
With a little cottage and 3 chairs, said Daddy Pig. And 3 bowls of delicious porridge. I may have had just a little spoonful.
Daddy!
Peppa giggled.
It's like we're in a fairy tale.
Peppa, George, Mammy and Daddy Pig followed the path through the woods to the bottom of a hill. I think we need more porridge to get up this hill, puffed Daddy Pig.
Don't worry, Daddy, said Peppa. We're going to have lunch soon.
When they arrived at the house on the top of the hill, Peppa knocked on the door.
Granny, we're here.
Everyone was very surprised when the door was opened by Mr. Wolf. "Oh!" they all gasped. "Oh, hello," said Mr. Wolf.
Mr. Wolf, said Peppa, why are you here?
"I'm just round for something to eat," replied Mr. Wolf. "Granny Pig has made a lovely lunch. Granny Pig poked her head around the door.
Hello, everyone,
she said.
Oh, hello, Granny,
said Peppa, a little relieved.
We're very hungry after all our walking. Don't worry, Peppa, said Granny Pig. Lunch is ready now.
When Peppa stepped inside, she saw Wendy Wolf was there too.
Hello, Peppa, said Wendy. What have you been doing today? Hello, Wendy, replied Peppa. We've been having a magical adventure in the fairy tale woods. Ooh,
gasped Wendy. Everyone sat down to eat Granny Pig's delicious lunch.
Why was it a magical adventure?
asked Wendy.
It's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears and Little Red Riding Hood, said Peppa. Wow, gasped Wendy. I love fairy stories.
Everyone loved fairy stories. Yum, yum, said Mr. Wolf, tucking in. Everyone loved Granny Pig's lunch, especially hungry Mr. Wolf. The end. Peppa Pig, Peppa's Frosty Fairy Tale. Once upon a time, it was a cold and quiet winter's day. Peppa and George were playing indoors and making lots of noise. Peppa, George, called Mummy Pig, why don't you look in your box of books and pick a nice story to read? Peppa and George searched through the box and pulled out their favourite books. They giggled with excitement as they looked through the pages. Then Peppa danced all over the living room, pretending she was in a fairy tale. Snowman! Cheered George, holding his favourite book. Peppa and George loved stories. That evening, Granny and Grandpa Pig came over to stay the night. Hello, Granny and Grandpa, said Peppa and George. Hello, little one, said Granny Pig, giving them both a big hug. It's time for bed now, said Mummy Pig. Please can Granny and Grandpa tell us a bedtime story? Asked Peppa. Of course, Peppa, said Granny Pig. We'd love to. Once Peppa and George were tucked up in bed, Grandpa Pig showed them a beautiful snow globe. Then he began to tell a story. Once upon a time, he said, there was a cold and magical place called Frosty Kingdom.
How do you get to Frosty Kingdom? Asked Peppa. First, you have to travel over the snowy hills, said Grandpa Pig. Then you journey through a deep, dark forest. Finally, you must climb a huge mountain until you reach the winter castle at the very top. I bet the Sugar Plum Fairy lives there and a Snow Queen, said Peppa. Snowman, said George. Peppa and George loved Grandpa Pig's story. I wish we could go to Frosty Kingdom too, said Peppa, as she and George drifted off to sleep. In the morning, Peppa and George woke up to the sound of jingling bells. They peered through the window to find out where the noise was coming from. It's snowing, gasped Peppa, and Granny and Grandpa are outside with a big sleigh and 3 reindeers. Just then, Mummy and Daddy Pig came into the bedroom. Granny and Grandpa are taking us all on an adventure, said Mummy Pig. We're going to Frosty Kingdom. Frosty Kingdom was in Grandpa's story, said Peppa. We'll be needing these, said Mummy Pig, handing out winter coats and woolly jumpers. We're travelling by sleigh. Hooray! Cheered Peppa and George, jumping up and down. Everyone climbed into the sleigh and they set off. Which way is Frosty Kingdom? Asked Daddy Pig. Grandpa Pig pointed far into the distance. First you have to travel over the snowy hills, he began. Then you journey through a deep dark forest, said Peppa. Finally, you must climb a huge mountain until you reach the winter castle at the very top. That's right, Peppa, said Grandpa Pig. After they went over the snowy hills and through the deep dark forest, they started to climb the huge mountain. Are we nearly there yet? Asked Peppa. Suddenly George saw something move. Snowman! He squealed. Everyone turned to see a snowman waving at them. Hello, said Peppa. We are on our way to Frosty Kingdom. Peppa and George waved goodbye, and the reindeers pulled the sleigh further up the mountain. Up the mountain they climbed, up and up and up, until the sleigh reached a clearing and the reindeer stopped. Are we nearly there now? Asked Peppa. I can't see the magical winter castle. I think we may be lost, said Grandpa Pig. I'm sure it was this way. Oh no, Peppa sighed. What are we going to do? If only there were someone here to help, said Grandpa Pig. Hello, Peppa and George, a voice said. Look, it's Miss Rabbit, said Peppa. Actually, Peppa, I'm the Sugar Plum Fairy, said Miss Rabbit. You're on the right path. Frosty Kingdom is further up the mountain. This is so magical, cried Peppa. The sleigh climbed higher and higher once more and was nearly at the top of the mountain when, Welcome to Mr. Fox's official Frosty Kingdom shop, said Mr. Fox. Everyone hopped off the sleigh to take a quick look around. Daddy Pig loaded up a basket with sponges, telephones and wool. I'm sure these will come in handy at Frosty Kingdom, he said. Everyone piled back onto the sleigh and they set off yet again. Finally they arrived at Frosty Kingdom. We're here, announced Grandpa Pig. Peppa saw something sparkling up ahead. As they got nearer, she gasped. It's the winter castle, and there's the Snow Queen. Look, it's Miss... Hello, everyone,
interrupted Miss Rabbit. I'm the Snow Queen. Welcome to Frosty Kingdom. Peppa and George waved and giggled excitedly. I wish we could stay here, said Peppa. Peppa, this is our cabin, said Grandpa Pig. We're going to stay here for the night. Wow! Cried Peppa. This is the best Frosty fairy tale adventure ever. Thank you, Granny and Grandpa. Ho, ho, ho. You are most welcome, said Grandpa Pig, smiling. Peppa and George raced inside the cabin and looked around excitedly. It's like we're in your story, cried Peppa. Maybe we are, said Grandpa Pig, laughing. Peppa loved Frosty fairy tales. Everyone loved Frosty fairy tales. The end. Peppa Pig. Peppa gives thanks. It is a lovely sunny morning. Peppa and Susie are having a tea party in the garden. I brought my teddy to join us, says Peppa. Did you bring your owl, Susie? No, says Susie. I brought Mr. Super Snuggles. He's the best bear in the world. What does he do? Peppa asks. He can sing, says Susie, and say I love you, and his eyes light up. Wow, says Peppa. My teddy can't do any of those things. When Peppa gets home, she finds Mummy and Daddy Pig. I would like a Mr. Super Snuggles, please, she says. But you have a teddy bear, Peppa, says Mummy Pig. My teddy is boring, Peppa snorts. He can't sing or talk, and his eyes don't light up. Oh, ho, ho, ho. Daddy Pig laughs. Come, Peppa, let me show you something. Daddy Pig shows Peppa a photo album. There are lots of pictures inside.
Wow!
This is when we went camping, says Peppa. And to the beach. And on a hot air balloon ride. And who is in all the pictures with you? Asked Daddy Pig. My teddy! Cries Peppa. Right, says Daddy Pig. You've had Teddy ever since you were a little piggy. That makes him very special. We have to be thankful for the things that we have, says Mummy Pig. What's thankful? Asked Peppa. It means we're happy for the wonderful things in our life, says Mummy Pig. What are you thankful for, Peppa? Peppa thinks. My toys! She runs upstairs. Her room is filled with lots of lovely toys. What else? Asked Mummy Pig. Our house, cries Peppa. I love our house, and our car, and our garden. Ho ho, laughs Daddy Pig. Anything else? Peppa thinks. I know something I'm thankful for, says Mummy Pig. What? Asked Peppa. You and George and Daddy Pig, of course, says Mummy Pig. Peppa giggles. I'm thankful for that too. And I'm thankful for Susie Sheep and all my friends, says Peppa. And Granny and Grandpa Pig. Let's call Granny and Grandpa Pig right now, says Mummy Pig. We can invite them to a special dinner. Later that day, Granny and Grandpa Pig arrive. Mummy and Daddy Pig make a delicious dinner for everyone. Peppa and George help set the table. This looks wonderful, says Granny Pig. Thank you for inviting us over. Peppa, Would you like to tell Granny and Grandpa what you learned today? Asked Daddy Pig.
Yes, says Peppa. I learned that I'm thankful. I'm thankful for my toys and our house and my friends. How lovely, says Granny Pig. But most of all, I'm thankful for my family, says Peppa. And my teddy.
Peppa loves being thankful. Everyone loves being thankful, especially when there's so much to be thankful for. The end. Peppa Pig and the Day of Giving Thanks. Peppa Pig and her brother George love going for walks with Mummy Pig and Daddy Pig. Today they are out among the trees and flowers and bugs and birds. Peppa is happy and thankful to be in this beautiful place.
Wow!
For Peppa and her family, it is a day for giving thanks.
I love the blue sky,
says Peppa.
Thank you, sky. I love the clouds floating in the sky,
she says.
They make pretty shapes. Thank you, clouds.
Peppa and George look for more things to thank on their walk. So does Daddy Pig. He looks up at a tall tree. Thank you, tree, he says. Peppa sees her favourite fruit.
Thank you, apples,
says Peppa.
It's nice to see you, turtle.
Peppa is thankful for the frogs, the fish, and especially the ducks. Look, George, says Mummy Pig, butterflies. George flaps his arms, just like the butterflies. George points.
Oh,
says Peppa. Then she says,
thank you, spider.
Ah! Cries Daddy Pig. He runs. He does not say thank you to the spider. There are so many things to be thankful for.
Hooray!
The flowers help the bees, says Mummy Pig.
And the bees give us honey, says Peppa. I love honey.
There are so many colourful leaves and pumpkins.
So pretty,
says Peppa. Peppa and George play in the leaves. Peppa feels something. Oh no! Rain, says Mummy Pig. Peppa doesn't want to get wet. She is not thankful for the rain. Oh no! Daddy Pig, Mummy Pig, Peppa and George wait under the trees. The water pours down. The ducks don't mind the rain at all. When the rain stops, they move on. But Peppa doesn't see the birds or butterflies or even the ducks. And the sky isn't blue. Where are the frogs and the turtles? Then, just ahead, Peppa sees something. She smiles.
Look!
The rain left a surprise for Peppa and George.
Thank you for the muddy puddle.
The end. Peppa Pig Puddle Playtime. Peppa and George have found a puddle. It is very big and very muddy.
Hooray!
George scoops some mud into his bucket. Says Peppa.
I love playing in muddy puddles.
Touch the shiny bucket of mud. Mummy Pig has come outside with her umbrella. Time to put on your rain clothes, she says. Peppa and George go to get changed. The rain makes their puddle even bigger.
Wow!
Touch the shimmery raindrops. Look, says Mummy Pig. Someone else likes jumping in the mud. Peppa gasps. A little green frog has hopped into the garden. Touch the bumpy frog. 3 ducks have waddled up to see Peppa and George.
Do you want to play with us too?
Asked Peppa. The ducks jump into the muddy puddle. Touch the fluffy duck. Hello, snorts Daddy Pig. I hear there's some puddle jumping going on.
There is, giggles Peppa. Jump in, Daddy.
Peppa loves muddy puddles. Everyone loves muddy puddles. Touch the icky, sticky mud. The end.
Hi kids, did you have fun watching this video? Then like and subscribe for more.
Peppa Pig Magic Mirrors. There is a new mirror in Peppa and George's bathroom. George thinks there is another little pig in the room. It's a mirror, George, says Mummy Pig. You can see yourself in them because they are so shiny. This gives Peppa an idea.
Come on, George, she says. Let's go and look for other shiny things.
Peppa and George find Daddy Pig downstairs.
We're looking for shiny things to see ourselves in, says Peppa.
Why don't you look in these spoons, suggests Daddy Pig. Daddy Pig gives Peppa and George a spoon each.
Wow!
They can see their faces in the spoons.
Hooray!
My face looks funny,
says Peppa. Now turn the spoon around, says Daddy Pig.
I'm upside down, cries Peppa. How does that work, Daddy?
It's simple, says Daddy Pig. Concave surfaces reflect light waves inversely to their origin. Peppa looks confused.
Is it magic?
asks Peppa. Yes, replies Daddy Pig. Peppa and George search for more shiny things. They meet Susie Sheep outside.
Look, Susie,
says Peppa, showing Susie her spoon.
I can make you turn upside down. Wow, how does it work?
asks Susie.
Magic,
replies Peppa. Peppa, Susie and George look for more magic things in the garden. They find a big muddy puddle.
I can see the sky,
says Susie. Just then, Pedro Pony and Danny Dog arrive.
Did you drop something in the puddle? No, we're just looking at our reflections just like a mirror,
says Peppa.
I know where there are some really funny mirrors,
says Danny.
Hooray!
The children head to the fair.
Roll up,
cries Miss Rabbit.
come and see my wobbly mirrors.
Wow!
Everyone goes inside Miss Rabbit's tent. Peppa and Susie look at their reflections in a funny shaped mirror.
What's happened to my body?
asks Peppa, giggling at her wobbly reflection. Danny is looking in a different mirror. His face and body look very wide in this one.
I've got all squishy,
says Danny. George has found a mirror that makes him look huge. "Grrr," says George. He thinks he is as big as a dinosaur.
Wow.
Pedro's mirror is the strangest of all.
Look at my neck,
says Pedro.
it is as long as Gerald Giraffe's. Why do we look different in each mirror, Daddy?
Asked Peppa. It's very simple, says Daddy Pig. Illusions of optical differentials, biconvex. Everyone looks a bit confused.
So is it magic?
Says Susie. Yes, it's magic, he replies. Outside the tent, Mummy Rabbit has brought her twins, Rosie and Robbie, to see their auntie, Miss Rabbit.
Hooray!
Hello, sister, says Mummy Rabbit. How are you?
I'm very good, sister,
replies Miss Rabbit. Daddy Pig and all the children come out of the tent. It was amazing in there, says Daddy Pig. And the mirror out here is amazing too. I can see two of you. It must be magic.
Silly Daddy,
says Peppa.
it's Miss Rabbit and Mummy Rabbit.
We don't need a mirror, says Miss Rabbit, because we look so alike. Well, we are sisters, says Miss Rabbit and Mummy Rabbit together. The end.
Hi kids, did you have fun watching this video? Then like and subscribe for more.